Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Megan's Place Conversations on Healing. I'm your host, Meghan Fouad, and this is a space where we explore mental and emotional health with honesty, compassion, and practical tools to restore relationships and pursue lasting change. I'm so excited for today's episode because I'm joined by someone very special, Tiffany Smith.
Hello.
Hi, Tiffany. And just sharing a little bit about Tiffany. Tiffany is a marriage and family therapist trainee and an intake coordinator, and she is also a mental health and addiction support specialist. She brings such a wealth of experience to supporting individuals impacted by both addiction and mental health challenges. Her heart for breaking stigma and creating safe and compassionate spaces allows healing and hope to flourish for the people she works with. Outside of her professional work, Tiffany loves hiking, camping, and spending time with her family at the beach and local parks. She dreams of one day writing a book to share her story and inspire others. So I'm really glad to have her here today.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to dive into your experiences and insights. And let's start with your passion for breaking the stigma around mental health.
So I am passionate about breaking the stigma behind mental health because a lot of people just think that, people that are having mental health issues are just having a fit or just overreacting or, just really misunderstood.
Mhm.
And for a long time, people didn't know that addiction and, mental health issues went hand in hand. Um, and a lot of times, because of mental health issues, people started using drugs to kind of self-medicate what was going on in their heads and their bodies, just all around. So it's really great that, now we're starting to break that stigma and getting it out there way more and just getting that knowledge into people.
Absolutely, because it's one of the main goals and one of the main reasons I wanted to invite you on was because the main goal of this podcast for me is beginning that process of destigmatizing even more. It's begun to happen outside of it, but there's still more work to be done around that. And so it makes me really curious. What do you wish more people understood about mental health and addiction?
That there's help and that their addiction does not define who they are, and that their mental health issues do not make them a horrible person. Um, a lot of people, I came from San Francisco and live in San Jose now, but um, a lot of people would look at people that were on the streets that just were going through mental health crisis and be like, oh my gosh, that person is just a homeless person and they don't matter and they, are just clouding up the streets and making tourists not want to be there. Um, and so I think that, it's really great that people are now starting to see and starting to understand that there's help for you. There's a way out.
Absolutely. I feel like there's been such a culture around dehumanizing those who are experiencing, mental health crises and who are also struggling with substance use. A lot of times both can actually be diseases and can, if they're not worked through, if there's not help, or if it's hard to access help, it can be really hard to make it through those. And I know that you've worked really closely with individuals who have been impacted by both addiction and mental health challenges. And how do you kind of see those two areas intersecting, and why is it so important that they're addressed together?
I see them intersecting because we don't know what people have been through. Um, we don't know their past. Me, I started going through trauma when I was really young. Um, I was molested by a family member for years when I was 7, and so um, I didn't talk about it until I was like in my 30s, and it was really hard for me. And there was a lot of things that happened in between that caused me to actually start using drugs at an early age, and that was my way of coping. Um, but there's just a misunderstanding about just how things coincide,
Hmm.
and it's really I try to make sure that like my sessions, if I work with somebody who has had a lot of trauma at a young age, I try to make sure that they feel comfortable because I felt so uncomfortable in my life growing up that it was unbelievable. Um, but I see that now that we are trying to change the stigma behind it, we're starting to see how things can coincide and how they go together. So, I see a really good change coming in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, that personal side of the story too. I think that, as therapists, we all have that passion that comes from somewhere. And, being able to share where that is coming from, I think allows you to do such meaningful work as well, because you really know where people are coming from when you've sat in their shoes.
Yeah.
And, I'm curious too, for someone listening who might be struggling themselves or maybe supporting a loved one, what are a few practical first steps that they can take toward healing or getting support?
Um, well, one, I think that it's really good that, we now have the 988 number. 988 is not only for mental health crisis, but they actually have a lot of resources. Um, and referrals for like the Mission Sobering Center. They also have the Crisis Stabilization Unit. That's a 23-hour stay that is through Momentum for Health. I worked on the trust team for about 6 months as a peer support specialist. So I got to see firsthand how it was helping people who are in addiction and also people who are suffering from mental health issues. So, like people who are in a crisis and just really need the support, then can call the 988 number. So that's really great that we have that here. Also, just reaching out to Narcotics Anonymous and, letting them know, like, even going to just a first meeting and letting people know, hey, I'm a newcomer and I need help, and they will surround you with love. They'll also try to help you, get into residential programs. We have a residential program for pregnant women and women with newborn babies. That's Prairie House on the Hill. We also have houses through support systems and pathway and just so much. Um, so we have a lot of things that can be first steps for people, which is amazing now. Um, the Mission Sobering Center, you can go there and they can actually get you connected with like clinician, a temporary clinician, but somebody who can help you get the resources that you need. You can also call us as a first step. I mean, I am always willing to work with people who are having addiction issues or mental health issues and that are in a crisis, and just, creating um, a safety plan and just supporting people through it. Like that's my number one goal is to be support for people. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, what you said is really important because, I think even a couple years ago, a lot of these resources weren't as well advertised and weren't as well known in terms of what's actually available to get help.
Absolutely.
Um, and they were very highly stigmatized too. I still hear it today. If someone's thinking about going to Narcotics Anonymous or AA, there's so many different groups and there's so much availability for help, but there are still people who are like, oh, like I'm not going to go there, or oh, like it's not for me. Um, and so I think, continuing to spread that information that, these are resources that are available. There's websites where you can go on and find a meeting at any time of the day, right down the street from you. Most of the time, there can be one very close by. And so I think just advocating for the fact that that information is out there is so important.
And even after COVID hit, I mean, we even have meetings that are online. Like you don't even have to go in. You can go on, you can jump on a link. get a Zoom link and jump on a meeting. And even if it's a meeting that's in Canada or, in a different state, you'll find somebody on there that is probably knowledgeable about a place in the Bay Area that can help you out or wherever you need it. So, I mean, COVID has opened up a lot of good stuff for us. And even with the telehealth sessions, like if you want to do a telehealth session and not go in, because I know a lot of times people are paranoid. They don't want to go out in public or they are ashamed. But there's things that you can do now that really help you.
Absolutely. And I think, something I've heard too, and this isn't necessarily me advocating for this to be what happens every time, but if it's what's needed the first time, people can always jump in that first meeting online without their camera on if they really feel like they need to get comfortable first.
Yeah,
And then down the line, turn it on, whatever that might look like. Maybe it takes a couple meetings, but I think that that's been, you know, a really amazing thing that came out of COVID is the ability to, one, the access, less barriers, transportation isn't as much of a barrier anymore, and you can get Wi-Fi almost anywhere at this point too. So I think that it's really great that there's those virtual options now too.
absolutely.
Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for sharing your insights and, your own story. It's been so inspiring to hear your passion for healing and also the ways that people can actually start their journey toward hope and restoration. And, for all the listeners out there, thank you for joining us on Megan's Place. Remember, healing is possible and you're never alone. Until next Monday at 10, take care of yourselves and each other.
Absolutely.